Good afternoon and welcome to today's webinar, which is covering Stronger Partnerships for Better Outcomes, which is a protocol for market relations recently published by the Think Local App Personal Partnership. My name is Sam Bennett. I'm co-director of Groundswell Partnership and shortly to start as director of Think Local App Personal in January of 2013. I'll probably be talking for 20 minutes to 30 minutes today to give you a good overview of Think Local App Personal, the National Market Development Forum workstream where the protocol was developed, and then I'll talk you through what that protocol is and how we hope it will help. There'll be time at the end for questions and answers. Okay, so I'll kick off with the webinar. The document, Stronger Partnerships for Better Outcomes, was published back in the summer of this year. We think it's an important document, and it's been developed and designed to help improve market relations at local level. So these are the way that commissioning organisations, provider organisations, and most importantly people with care and support needs, their carers and families, engage with one another around issues related to how we work together to develop really good, responsive, personalised services for the future. We think it's particularly important at the moment, given the continued pressure on public finances we face here in the UK, which is playing out locally in very difficult decisions being made about how to use finite resources. And part of the premise behind this new protocol is that when the money has to go as far as it now does, it's even more important that we build relationships based on mutual trust and understanding and are able to make the best decisions that we can. I'll tell you a lot more about the protocol in a moment or two, but I want to start by just saying something about Think Local App Personal, because I don't want to assume people's prior knowledge about that, especially if you're not from the UK. The Think Local App Personal Partnership is a cross-sector partnership in health and social care in the UK. More than 30 organisations have come together and are signatories to the partnership. They represent central government, local government, provider organisations and their associations, and health bodies as well. So lots of important organisations have come together to form Think Local App Personal. They're coming together basically with a shared commitment to continuing to deliver on personalisation and community-based support here in the UK, which is helpfully aligned with the government's policy agenda as recently outlined in the Care and Support White Paper published in July of this year. So there's a really helpful synergy between the work of the partnership and what government wants to see happen in social care. Been around for about 18 months, and I think the final thing to say about that is another important signatory to the partnership is something called the National Co-Production Advisory Group. So this is a group of people with lived experience, people that hold personal budgets themselves, or who are carers or family members for people with personal budgets, who have a real experience of how the system works and doesn't work over here for older people and people with care and support needs of all types. And they play a critical role in steering the way that the partnership works. The partnership, since its inception, has had around 6 priority work streams, and it does work nationally to try and progress issues related to personalisation and community-based support where we deem we can perform a helpful role. And one of those work streams from the beginning of Think Local App Personal has been something called the National Market Development Forum. This was established back in 2010 as part of what was then the Putting People First programme. Putting People First preceded Think Local App Personal and was a cross-government agreement that personalisation should be a key part of social care policy. The forum brought together and does bring together leaders from across the sector, more than 50 leaders from across the sector. These are chief executives of voluntary and community sector organisations, as well as private sector providers, assistant directors and directors of adult social services from within councils, those from specifically a commissioning perspective, along with interested parties from central government and from improvement agencies. And the group has met a number of times since its inception in 2010, basically to work together to try and address issues of mutual interest and concern in relation to developing a diverse market of personalised care and support at local level. So they've had a number of meetings structured around specific themes and have published a number of papers since 2010 looking at issues related to commissioning and market development and what it takes to deliver really good personalised services in a time of continued pressure on public finances. If you want to have a look at previous papers that the NMDF has developed, they're all available through the Think Local at Personal website. There's a section of that website that is given over entirely to updates and products developed by the National Market Development Forum. So that's broadly what that was set up to do. I'll tell you now a little bit about the programme in 2012. It's continued to be a key vehicle to deliver some of the partnership's key priorities and has worked through three subsets or task and finish groups in 2012, each of which has resulted in products that have been published over the last few months or so. The key issues those have been looking at in 2012 have been market facilitation and procurement, which is predominantly about how the commissioning landscape is changing to one where statutory bodies need to work more collaboratively with providers and with local people. I'll come on to say some more about that. Quality assurance and improvement is a very recent publication of quality assurance principles for adult social care developed by the National Market Development Forum, and I'll touch on that briefly at the end. And then finally, a task and finish group that I facilitated within the last 6 to 9 months or so, looking at developing personalised services. So that's both what really good person-centred care and support looks like within existing service settings, but also what some of the gaps might be and where the opportunities might lie to develop entirely new models of service delivery in response to the kinds of things that people say are important and the things people want to buy with their personal budgets. So that's the work that's been taken forward by the Forum in 2012. And one of the key products from that work stream has been the subject of today's webinar, the Protocol for Market Relations. That was developed within the Personalised Services Task and Finish Group, which was chaired by Sharon Allen. She's the current Chief Executive of the Improvement Agency Skills for Care in the UK. And that group, as I said, has been looking at what it means and what it takes to develop really good personalised models of care and support in a range of different settings. In parallel to that, there was also some work supported by In Control that happened in the northwest of the UK, similarly bringing together commissioners and providers and local people, and I was lucky enough to also be involved in facilitating that group. In speaking to both groups of people, the conversation we had was around if there's something that we can do nationally, if there's something that we can make an impact on that would have the best possible kind of effect on delivering really good personalised services locally, what would it be? And almost kind of unanimously, I think everybody came back to that question with the answer that if we could seek to improve the quality of relationships at local level between commissioners and providers and local people who often weren't involved in any discussions with commissioners and providers at that point, then that would be absolutely the most impactful thing that we could seek to do. I think there's a general acceptance that there's quite a lot of adversarial relationships still out there, especially in light of the budgetary pressures that people face. And if we can find some way of modelling what good looks like in terms of really good market relations at local level, then that would be a good contribution. So that is what we've tried to do with the Protocol for Market Relations, which has had a number of different working titles as the iterations developed, but ended up with the title of Stronger Partnerships for Better Outcomes. And as I said, that was published as a product from the forum in the summer of 2012, and you can find that on the National Market Development Forum web pages, along with a range of other kind of workshop materials that we published alongside the protocol. So the protocol is, I hope, a short, engaging, helpful, practical document which is designed to link very closely with some of the other priorities for Think Local Act Personal. You may be aware of the framework for measuring progress in delivering personalisation that Think Local Act Personal has developed. That's called Making It Real, and that includes a set of 26 I statements, which are things in people's own words that describe what they would be feeling and experiencing if personalisation was real where they lived. And the Protocol for Market Relations is designed to link in very closely with that. So if organisations are signing up their commitment to making it real, and at last count, more than 350 organisations across the sector have done just that in the last few months, and then part of that process then is to develop an action plan to say how you're going to take that work forward. So Stronger Partnerships for Better Outcomes is one possible option for local partnerships to say and to demonstrate their commitment to making it real by signing up to this protocol. As I said, I think earlier, it's about recognising that there's a gap in the rhetoric, in the experience on the ground in many areas. We've been talking about the importance of better partnership working, both across and within services here in the UK for many, many years. It isn't a new concept. And we've been talking for at least 5 years or more about the concept of co-production and how we need to make sure we involve people with care and support needs in the design, delivery and evaluation of the services that they use. And that comes across very strongly in many of the policy documents over the last few years around personalisation and social care policy more broadly. But it's quite difficult sometimes to see how that's related into tangible kind of differences and changes on the ground, where, as I said, there's still a proliferation of quite adversarial kind of relationships and people not living by the principles of co-production and good collaboration. So the intention with this protocol is to set out a number of principles that should underpin market engagement at local level, and to take that further and to identify as specifically as we were able a set of behaviours and suggested actions that each party to those local market relations can take. So things that commissioners can do, things that providers can do, and things that people with care and support needs can do to ensure that market relations are as positive and productive and based on shared and mutual understanding and trust as they can be. So although it's not a brand new problem, we hope that this pushes forward the solution in a more practical way than we've been able to before. And I'll come on in a moment or two to say some of the things that we've suggested as practical kind of steps that each of those parties can take to help improve relations locally. So that's broadly what it is. It reflects, I think, the requirement for a really new kind of way of working. On the left-hand side of the slide here, we've got a very basic diagram, I guess, which is demonstrating in a quite straightforward way what I'd describe as fairly traditional commissioning relationships, where commissioners and providers have been engaged in a predominantly transactional relationship. Commissioners have the money, providers have the services, there's a supply and demand, and commissioners are procuring what they need, and on the basis of people's needs and expectations for the future, and therefore not directly kind of engaging necessarily with people, carers and families. It's been more of a two-way led transactional relationship. On the right-hand side, however, we've got, again, a very simple diagram to illustrate how I think that's changing. It's much more dynamic and much more of a three-way relationship with commissioners, providers, and people, carers and families working together to co-produce outcomes. And there are some things about personalisation that mean that that kind of way of working becomes a necessity. And one of those, I guess, is that over here we've been introducing personal budgets in social care for at least the last 7 or 8 years. The numbers of people that are now managing their social care packages through personal budgets is well over 30% of those eligible, and the intention is that that should increase significantly over the next period as well. And what that means is ultimately that the concept of a transactional relationship where commissioners buy and providers provide is not going to be appropriate or sustainable because commissioners cease to be the primary purchasers of care and support in that market because those decisions have been devolved down to individuals who, with the support that they need, are buying things for themselves. That changes the whole nature of the challenge of commissioning in health and social care. It means that each party, commissioners, providers and local people, need to find better ways to work together to facilitate and empower and enable the market to offer the sorts of things that people say that they want and need. So a big shift, I think, in the nature of the relationships and the power dynamics, I suppose, between a more traditional commissioning relationship and how that needs to look now that we've made significant strides towards a more personalised social care model. This next slide describes a market facilitation cycle. The partnership, Stronger Partnerships for Better Outcomes protocol is based around, as I've said, some very specific suggestions for things that people can do, that commissioners can do, and that providers can do to improve local market relations. And the things that we've suggested are structured around this model. And we've narrowed it down to 5 things that commissioners could do, 5 things that providers can do, and 5 things that people, carers and families can do against each stage of this model. So this really, if you're familiar with a normal kind of business planning cycle or a commissioning cycle, it's very similar, really. There are 3 stages, we think, to the task I was just describing of working more collaboratively together to facilitate the local market. And they are understanding the market, which becomes, in a world of personalisation, a different task than it might have been previously, because the extent or the scope of the local market is potentially much wider than the sorts of things people used to buy or that commissioners used to buy on their behalf. Understanding the market now means having a much wider view of the sorts of things that people may want to buy with their personal budgets now and in the future, of the gaps in the market, of the prospects and opportunities for growth, of the capacity within the market for innovation. So that's the understand kind of part of this cycle, and we've suggested some things that each party could do at that stage. Planning what needs to happen differently, and then intervening in the market in the way that makes sense to ensure that people are able to get the sorts of things that they have said that they want and need. So that's the model, very simply and quickly explained, and there is a more kind of lengthy explanation within the paper itself and also within some of the other documents published in the last few years by the National Market Development Forum. On the left-hand side of the model there, you can see just 4 kind of principles for engagement, which, as well as the specific actions that I'll come on to in a minute, we feel are the things that really need to be reflected in the way that people work together. Sharing risks, particularly enabling providers to feel that they can have some semblance of stability to be able to try and test new things and to develop new models of support for the future. Commissioners finding ways to help them feel comfortable in doing that by sharing risks. a commitment on all sides to reducing bureaucracy, both within the tendering and procurement process, so that that is something that can be engaged in more actively and effectively by all parties, but throughout the whole market facilitation process, and right down to making sure that people can engage in ways that don't necessarily require them to attend kind of regular meetings and such like. So reducing bureaucracy feels like an important element. Increasing capacity feels important too, particularly I think in relation to supporting people with care and support needs, their carers and families, that play a really productive and effective role in shaping local activity, because people won't necessarily kind of have the skills or prior knowledge to do that to best effect. So for this to work really well, we need to concentrate on how we can support people to engage in really effective partnerships. And finally, a commitment to measuring success. If we're going to work together in stronger partnerships for better outcomes, then we need to have a good shared, clear understanding of what those outcomes are and how we're going to measure our progress towards them. So I won't talk about that in any more detail, but suffice to say there's much more on that market facilitation model in some of the other papers from the forum. This next slide then, I've just picked out 3 of the very specific suggestions in terms of actions that people can take to, I guess, demonstrate that market relations are working as well as they can do. And as I said, just to remind you of the process for developing this, we worked with commissioners, we worked with providers, and we worked with people, carers and families to come up with these. And we did that in part because it needs to reflect what will work on the ground, and to make sure that it was a realistic and reasonable set of propositions, not pie in the sky that people felt they wouldn't be able to deliver. So these have been co-produced with the people that they're most important to. The left-hand side is something that commissioners can do at the planning stage, which is creating the space and conditions for positive, courteous and respectful engagement, including through regular forums. And provider forums are something that happen a lot in the traditional way of doing things, but they've tended to be, in my experience, quite poorly attended, quite poorly managed, and really struggling to maintain the momentum that they may have started with. And there are some reasons for that, and often it's that they don't have consistent attendance by senior decision makers, either on the commissioning side or the provider side, that the agenda management hasn't been great, that people haven't really understood the benefit or purpose of their involvement in the meeting. So we've suggested that all of those things happen, that also provider forums should, if they're working really well, be co-chaired by providers and by a local representative of someone with care and support needs there, or the consumer side, as it says here. We think that's important, rather than placing onus necessarily for managing and chairing these meetings on the commissioning side, that if consumers and providers get the sorts of things they want from these meetings, one of the ways to ensure that happens is by setting up that sort of joint sharing mechanism. Another one here is at the bottom or middle one on this slide is a suggestion for something that people with care and support needs can do, which is to provide feedback to commissioners and providers and to share ideas for doing things differently. I think it's important that if we're seeking to adopt this principle of co-production, if we're recognizing that we need to work collaboratively and that we need to do that by putting the person with care and support needs at the center of the process, then we need to ensure that there are good mechanisms in place to both gather feedback but also to invite ideas and stories about how we can do things differently, and to give people a sense that that will be acted upon and will go through some process once that information's been shared. And the top right one is something that providers can do to improve local relations, which is about sharing information about your services through a transparent and accessible menu of support options. A number of providers have, since the adoption of much more diverse range of, or a menu of service options that give people a really clear understanding of what things cost and what is available and how that can be shaped. So really useful that providers can do that both for their local commissioners and for people that they support. So as I said, there's a total of 5 of those against each stage of the model that I talked you through on the previous page. So in total, we hope it shouldn't appear too overwhelming a prospect, because that's 15 things really in total that commissioners can do, 15 things that providers can do, and 15 things that people, carers and families can do to really demonstrate that relations are working well locally. One brief, more extended example is the suggestion that each local area has a market position statement. So one of the specific actions we recommend in the protocol is that commissioners ensure that there is a market position statement for adult social care. Probably requires a word or two of explanation, as market position statements are quite a new thing over here. I think it's a model that has been borrowed from other sectors where it's a more common concept. But basically, a market position statement is a short analytical document which is written about the market for the market. It's intended to convey information about what the commissioning authority knows about the current state of play in relation to supply and demand, how resources are used at the moment, how many people access services, how those projections are expected to change over time as a result of demographic change and other trends. Where the commissioning authority sees there as being strengths or weaknesses in that market, information about the sorts of things that people are buying with their personal budgets, so that providers can know what they might need to develop and have some certainty that if they're to invest in developing a new service, there will be a demand for it. As well as confirmation within that of any specific kind of opportunities or incentives that the market is being offered, I guess, by the commissioning authority. We think they're really a very powerful step, a very positive step to improving local market relations, not as an additional set of responsibilities. They're not intended to replace commissioning strategies or joint strategic needs assessments or anything else, but there hasn't previously been any document of this sort prepared specifically for providers in the market to help them to know the sorts of things they need to have confidence in their businesses and to be able to make decisions about how they respond to people's needs and aspirations for the future. So that's just one more detailed kind of example. If you're interested to see what market position statements look like, and as I said, I think that they're intended to be concise, so that some of the best ones I've seen are no more than 12 pages, and that includes information ranging from demographic projections through to current use of resources through to market opportunities. If you Google that, there are 12 or 14 that I've got access to as well. So if you're specifically interested in seeing those, I'd be happy for you to contact me after this. My contact details are on the final slide, and I'll be able to send you through some examples of what we think are some of the best ones that are happening at the moment. There's been a recent program sponsored by the Department of Health called Developing Quality and Choice in the Market, where local authorities are currently being supported to develop their skills around market position statements. So I think, although it's relatively new, there will be a lot more of this kind of stuff happening, which is very positive because we think it's a really good building block to stronger partnerships for better outcomes. So how do we hope the protocol will be used? How do Think Local at Personal, Groundswell Partnership hope that the protocol will be used? Well, we think that although at national level there can be a framework set and some suggestions made, and we've done that, I think, to the best of our ability, going through a very co-productive process and involving the people that this affects to come up with our best guess, or a start of a 10 if you like, for what really good market relations need to look like. I think it's only right that the detail of exactly how that needs to work and the mechanisms that may need to be in place to support it to happen well should be decided at local level. So the expectation with the protocol is not that this is a set-in-stone protocol that you need to absolutely kind of adopt and take on board from this day forward. The intention was that it would be the start to a local conversation, a start of a 10, as I said, for people locally to come together and decide, well, if we want to have the best possible market relations round here, and we can see the benefit and the importance of doing that, and if this is a set of suggestions for the sorts of things we can do to ensure that, then what might that need to look like for us, and how might we take that work forward at a local level. So that's how we hope it will be used as the start to a discussion, as possibly some of the information that goes to those rejuvenated provider forums to ensure that there's a really good stuff for people to get stuck into and to talk about. But we also recognise that we need to probably demonstrate more than we've been able to in this first publication exactly how people will go about that. So there's some follow-on work that is happening with the protocol, which I said was published in the summer of this year, so it's been out a little while. But Think Like TLAP Personal is looking now early in the new year at doing some relatively quick piloting work with the protocol in several local areas to gather examples of really what it looks and feels like in practice to pick this up and use it and turn it into something that has local meaning and resonance. So that will be happening in the new year. Independently of that, there's been some work aligned with the initial group of commissioners and providers that came together to inform this document earlier this year, where some local authorities have just decided to pick it up and adopt it and to develop their own versions already. So I know that Stockport is a prime example of that, and they're currently in the process of doing just that, and there are other local authorities in the region that are looking to do that as well, which is really good to see. So it's intended to provide a framework. We hope that it is, but we also recognise that we need to, especially in the current environment where people have limited time to look at this sort of stuff, to provide some suggestions as to how people get the best possible effect and impact from using this. So that's the next steps around it. I just want to finish off by very briefly introducing three other kind of products through the NMDF. I referred earlier to the fact that it has its own section on the Think Local TLAP Personal website, and you can access through those pages a range of products from the inception of the NMDF back in 2010. There are a range of briefing papers, but what I've got up on the screen here are the covers of, or a web shot of, three of the most recent products which are related to, or at least complementary to the protocol that I've been talking about. One is a series of workshop materials called Commissioning the Future. These are suggested ways of having that local discussion. So if you're going to pick up the protocol and decide how you develop your own local virtual, if you're going to start working more collaboratively based on mutual trust and understanding, then what will that look and feel like? So these Commissioning the Future workshop materials are bits and pieces designed to support people to run their own workshops, to model what that looks and feels like. So there's a range of scenarios within that. There are different roles and things that people play, and it's all about supporting people to develop a more rounded view of what it feels like to be coming up or addressing each of these challenges from different perspectives. So I would encourage you to look at that. There's 4 or 5 sets of workshop materials in there, ranging from very specific challenges that people face right now, like remodelling learning disability services, through to the impact of personal budgets on block contracting arrangements. So there's a range of stuff there. The second one in the middle there is the quality assurance principles for social care. There's been, as I mentioned back at the beginning of the presentation, a task and finish group looking at quality assurance, and this is a product from that work, it sets out some very basic, intended to be universal principles for how we can seek to work together to ensure high quality services. And that's very recently published, back only in late November or early December. And finally, on the right-hand side, if you can make that out there, that's a web shot from, or a screen grab rather, from one of the pages on the TLAP website, which is something called the Provider Blueprint. This is an interactive web-based resource that is a repository for good practice case studies about how provider organizations in particular are adapting their services and delivering really good person-centered care and support in a wide variety of different settings. So we've gathered a lot of case studies, really quite detailed ones that we hope provide some really good kind of pointers for others. And they're organized around a range of thematic areas so that you can search for the sorts of case studies or the sorts of learning that you're most keen to look for. So whether that's stuff related to HR, recruitment, supervision and appraisal, which on this model would be under people, or whether it's how the contracts are changing, or how people are providing personal budget statements, then that would be under money, etc. So I would encourage you to have a look at the NMDF pages if you haven't done so already, and that's just a very brief run through of 3 of the other products that are currently available, as well as the protocol for market relations that I've concentrated on predominantly this afternoon. So that's everything I wanted to say about that. You can see on the screen now at the moment the web address for Think Local at Personal, my personal email address, and by all means feel free to contact me about anything that I've discussed this afternoon. There's also the Groundswell Partnership web address and our Twitter and Facebook handles as well. So we'd encourage you to follow us on either or both.